am excited to go ahead and kick off the discussion. This is our last webinar of the year. So if you have joined the Perfeqta webinars, we have hosted one pretty much every single month since January. Really the goal of these monthly webinars is to have really important and relevant informational sessions related to talent development, related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and related to building psychologically safe and equitable workplaces. Today, we are actually going to be talking about embedding DEI into learning and development strategies. This topic is really important because many of our client partners at Perfeqta are actually building out 2024 learning and development strategies and roadmaps. And what we have found is that as organizations are investing more in trainings and wanting their employees and managers to be equipped to have conversations on sensitive topics, such as race, such as some of the societal issues that we've seen happen in the world lately, it does start with how folks are being really equipped and having the right tools to actually have these conversations. We've seen also that companies have made some mistakes along the way by having a once a year annual kind of check in the box unconscious bias training. And I am here to say that that is just not enough. Employees want the skills on how to make sure they are showing up in a way that will contribute to building a healthy work environment. And we really cannot expect everyone to be at the same level of understanding and awareness with their own personal biases, perceptions, in terms of how to make sure that inclusivity is happening within their teams and within their environment. So training is a very, very, very important tool to making sure that employees are being taken along this DEI continuum, right? We can't expect everyone to come in day one and understand what does it actually mean to be an ally? What does it mean to actually be an inclusion champion? But when organizations have a full year annual learning and development plan embedded with diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout, that will most certainly help to make sure that employees are being taken along that journey well, which will then in turn support employee satisfaction, employee retention, will make better managers and leaders, right? That will in turn make employees more productive. And all in all, everyone benefits. So I do want to do a pulse check with you all here today. How many of you all have taken DEI trainings or brought in speakers? Was it a check in the box training? Was it surface level? Like, what was your response and experience with the trainings your company has had? Feel free to drop that in the chat. I'm seeing in the chat, check the box trainings, a mix of really great trainings and some that check the box. If I can be some check the box, but some were insightful, got it. So it's kind of a mix here and there. I think that's what I'm hearing you all say. If I can be honest, years ago, I actually started telling organizations that were reaching out, even to me and our company, to come in and do an annual unconscious bias training, that we wouldn't do it because we saw and heard that the impact of those trainings were more harmful. If we're coming in and doing a training and say, hey, let's check your biases. Here's how to show up as a better, colleague, coworker, leader, right? But there was actually no policies being implemented to actually hold folks accountable to that behavior. It felt very surface level, superficial, and it just did not land well for the sustainability of building an inclusive workplace, right? So now at Perfecta, we always do a series of trainings with our clients, right? We're not just going to come in and do a one and done, because this work is not just a one and done thing. And I love that Manny said, designed and attended a variety of low and high touch trainings. I'm curious when you say low and high touch trainings, what that means. If you send me a private message here, I would love to just learn a little bit more about what that looked like at your company. But it is great to hear that some of the trainings were insightful, that you all were actually a part of. So if you are new to Perfecta, it means performance, equity, and talent. Our mission is to build high-performing teams and put equity back into talent. We do that through DEI consulting. We do that through providing and conducting DEI trainings. We help our client partners really launch DEI governance structures, supporting DEI councils, task force committees, as well as employee resource groups. And all in all, what we believe is that no organization will become fully inclusive until the most marginalized person feels psychologically safe. I'm excited to share with you all some of the insights that we have really learned throughout our many years of training. We have trained thousands of professionals in the last few years. We've done virtual, in-person, hybrid trainings. We've trained executive teams on embedding equity from the top down. We've also done trainings on allyship to the entire organization. We've done management trainings on how to be a better, inclusive people manager. We facilitated microaggressions trainings. We've trained ERGs, we've trained executive sponsors, right? So we've trained several different audiences, several different levels, functions within a business. And so I'm excited to bring to you all some of the research and the learning experiences and best practices, really, that we've gathered from being able to work with so many amazing organizations. So I want to share a few stats with you. The first one here is that L&D has become a major focus for companies, especially as employee retention is a big worry of the majority of business leaders. They are very worried about how to retain their talent, especially seeing how many organizations have actually had to do some layoffs, have had to go through restructuring. And there's always a trickle effect of employees leaving an organization when that trust is lost, when that confidence in the vision of the leadership team is lost, right? And so employee retention is important. And also, employee retention is important because employees will leave if they don't feel like they're being invested in, if they don't feel like their professional development and growth is being taken seriously. So even if we take a step back from DEI and talk specifically about learning and development is one of the most critical things, benefits that a company can provide to an employee from as soon as they start the organization. This starts in the onboarding process, and this should actually carry on throughout their entirety of their time with an organization on a regular basis, okay? One of the top reasons employees leave is due to a lack of growth or a lack of access, knowledge, education, resources. So we have found at Perfecta that it's important for organizations to prioritize streamlined and sustainable L&D efforts if they do really care about putting their people and their culture first. Studies have also seen that L&D is working more on a cross-functional level now, so working with different groups within the business, recognizing again, every single person at a company has different needs based on their level, based on their function, based on their understanding with the material, based on the needs, goals, and objectives of the organization, right? And so we're seeing now organizations really take L&D much more seriously, but also L&D really having that strategic relationship build out to make sure that the trainings are much more impactful and sustainable. What I want to ask you all here is, at your organization, are you embedding DEI into these efforts? And I'm going to drop this question in the chat here as well. Are you embedding DEI into your efforts? Just take a couple of minutes to let you all answer that question. Are you embedding DEI into your efforts? I'm going to give you 3 responses. Is it a yes, not yet, or not sure? Because some of you all may be like, I might need to find out first before I answer this question. Vanessa says, yes, I'm actually leading the DEIB enablement initiatives at the company in partnership with L&D. Well, go you. Shout out to you, Vanessa. Thank you. That's phenomenal. And let's just keep the chat going, y'all. Answer that question. And you know what? Before I move on, I do want to just share an important stat here that's on this slide. I do want to make sure I say this out loud, even though it's here for you all. A recent industry report suggested that companies promoting diversity through DEI trainings are 2.6 times, so almost 3 times more successful at retaining their workforce. And inclusive teams are 35% more productive. So if you want to take some of this information back to your leadership team, tell them that this is why it's important. 3 times more successful at retaining their workforce. Think about also the cost that goes into hiring and replacing a great employee. The cost of losing that institutional knowledge as well, right? The time that goes into hiring and interviewing and onboarding a new person. So if you really care about retaining your talent, you will care and want to prioritize L&D. DEI training is not just a policy. It's a strategic approach to foster belonging and innovation. A year-long DEI roadmap can significantly enhance workforce engagement and performance. What I often tell our client partners at Perfeqta is that if you really truly want your employees to perform well, you have to provide them with the tools and the resources and the information to be able to do that. Now, these are some of the things that we've seen to be an extremely huge challenge and mistake made when it comes to building L&D roadmaps. One size fits all approach. Have you all recognized that every single person has a unique learning style, right? This is why it is important to find different ways to create and provide learning materials. And I'll give you some tips on that a little bit later. Not measuring training effectiveness. And I'm going to give you all some metrics here on how you can go deeper with how you actually measure the effectiveness and the success of your training, other than how many people showed up to the training, how many people attended it, how many people completed it, right? How can you take that much deeper? Training is one thing, application is another, right? How can we actually apply, or look at the relationship of the application of the material with the actual education of the material to make sure that you do see that changed behavior, that evolved behavior. So I'll give you some tips on that. Ignoring employee feedback, or may I say, not getting employee feedback at all, right? Again, even for those of you that are leading these L&D efforts, you may have one way of how you absorb content and learning material that might be completely different for your employees at your company. Inconsistent DEI messaging. If I could stand on the top of the hill and scream that out, you want to make sure that your DEI messaging is consistent throughout what the leadership team is saying in terms of how they define and vision DEI for the company. When it comes to your employer brand, what's on your company website, trickles down all the way into your trainings, right? Because your employees are looking for consistency. Consistency builds trust. Consistency builds understanding and awareness, right? And once folks are able to understand something, they're more able to buy into it. They're able to engage in it. It's hard to engage in something you don't understand if you're getting a lot of conflicting messages. Lack of customized training for different roles. Again, we really focus on the levels within organizations, and that is how we really kind of dissect who our audiences should be at Perfeqta. The training that we do for executive teams is not going to be the training that we do for ERG leaders, right? They have different responsibilities, different levels of buy-in with DEI, different goals, different things that they are going to be held accountable for. It's going to look different. All right, so let's start off by talking about 5 keys to successful L&D roadmaps. The first one here is to really know your audience. Know your audience. Know what they care about. Know what their needs are. Once you know your audience as well, you'll be able to really know where their level of understanding is with the material. So what I want to encourage you all to do is, let's say you want to roll out an inclusive leadership training, right? Download our inclusive leadership guide at Perfeqta. It's not here in this stack. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn, or you can respond to our emails and ask for it. But we have an inclusive leadership guide that provides you with the 4 A's of inclusive leadership. It's an inclusive leadership framework or an inclusive leadership continuum that shows where everyone is on a different level of their own inclusive leadership journey. The first is appetite. They have an appetite for becoming more inclusive. They are aware of it, right? Then it goes all the way to accountability. You may have leaders that are firmly bought in, they get it, they want to be held accountable, they want to grow in that area, and you have some that may have just realized what inclusive leadership is, right? Understanding your audience is going to be really key to making sure that the training meets them where they are. You don't want to provide a training for them that is too complex to the point where it's not easily digestible, but you also don't want to make it too simple to where, you have folks getting bored with it or asking, well, why am I here, right? I will say, this can be hard to do, right? At Perfeqta, I'll give you another example, we've done trainings with ERG leaders, new ERGs that have been around for a couple of years. And so we always try to find that balance of how do we make sure that we aren't boring the more mature and evolved ERGs, but also we're not speaking too complex for the ERGs that are just getting started. So we use a lot of frameworks at Perfeqta, because that way everyone can kind of see where they are in their journey on that continuum, right? Assessing your current DEI state, I'll talk about that in the next slide a little bit more, but understanding where your organization is really important when it comes to knowing your audience. Providing engaging and inclusive training methods, measuring training effectiveness, and then integrating DEI for busy schedules. This one may really resonate with you all. How many of your employees or leadership teams say they don't know if they have time for DEI trainings, right? You probably are thinking about that as you're planning for 2024 L&D programs, right? Is how can I make this not seem like busy work? How can I make this not seem like something they just have to do because, we're just forcing them to do it, but something that they realize is really valuable and is time well spent. So let's actually dive into each of these. First one, know your audience. So I talked a little bit about this, and as you all see here, I'm going to go into each of the 5 areas that I shared on the previous slide. Audience segmentation. This is what you want to do when it comes to knowing your audience. Customize it for different roles. Again, executives, managers, new hires, break it down into the different audience groups. Once you do that, then you'll want to back into what are their DEI needs. Next is understanding their unique perspectives. That's also a different way to know your audience. Now, what we do at Perfeqta, in order for us to make sure we are customizing our trainings to the audience, is we'll send a pre-learner survey out. So we want to do an allyship training. We'll ask questions in this survey that will help us to really understand where those learners are in terms of really understanding what allyship truly is. Do they understand what allyship looks like in action? Or do they say I'm an ally, but they don't have any action put behind that, right? So having a pre-learner survey helps us to understand those unique perspectives. Now, what you can also do is look at other survey results, culture engagement survey results, focus groups, work with your DEI, people, talent, culture, HR teams to see if there's anything you can look at that will help you really understand the perspectives, needs, and experiences of your learners. Content tailoring for DEI understanding levels. Very, very important. At Perfeqta, something we often talk about with our clients is the change management curve. So look it up, or you can also reach out to us, and I'm happy to share with you what that change management curve looks like. But again, you will have folks that are not bought into DEI at all, and then you'll have some that are like, give me more, tell me what to do. Right? I want to make our company the most inclusive place ever. And then also you want to make sure you're providing diverse teaching methods, right? E-learning. We are working on Perfeqta Academy, so stay tuned for that, as that will be relaunching in Q1 of next year. But folks love e-learning. Why? Because they get to watch it on their own time. They get to pause it, come back to it, take notes, right? So consider e-learning. Make sure that your teaching, your trainings are interactive. So I encourage you all to really, really vet those trainers and speakers that you do have coming. We always at Perfeqta like to make sure our training method is a mix of education and empowerment and application. And I will always tell our audiences that we're here to be in conversation with them. We're here to talk with them and not just talk to them, because we recognize that in order for people to really understand, they actually need to maybe repeat it back, answer a few questions, have time in that particular moment to apply it to real world scenarios. So we do a lot of, role playing, right? We do a lot of, giving them some things to do, whether that's pre-reading before training, post-learning materials afterwards, at different parts of the training, actually providing some real life examples and making sure they have time, whether that's a breakout room or breakout session, to actually talk more about it within their groups, small groups. That will ensure that there is some inclusivity that's happening. If you do invest in e-learning, please make sure that what we've done, at least with Perfeqta Academy, is we always use subtitles, closed captioning. We provide a full transcript, right? We want to make sure that however someone learns, that they have the ability to do that. And one thing we'll be rolling out in Q1 is providing voiceovers or just the voice recordings for each of our trainings. You might have some folks that are more auditory learners, so some are more visual, right? So you do want to make sure that your training methods are meeting those different styles. Assessing your current DEI state. The first one here is conducting an audit. It is important to understand where you are currently, where you want to go, and then that gap in between is the fun part. That's where we come in and with the strategy development. So how do you assess your current DEI state? An audit utilizing surveys, focus groups, feedback channels, right? There are so many different ways to get employee feedback. But what you want to be able to understand is, what are the employees' perceptions and what are their experiences of DEI within our company culture? Let's say those gaps are around cultural competence. We need folks that are not from historically excluded groups to build more cultural competence levels. Or maybe we're finding that managers are not able to or not equipped to create an inclusive team dynamic. So maybe we need to come in and do more inclusive leadership and communication training for managers specifically. Maybe there is a gap that we're finding in the organization where women are not growing to leadership ranks within an organization, right? This is a challenge across all industries, across all company sizes. So how can we create programming that specifically invests in women's leadership development, right? You'll see that you want your trainings, your policies, your programs to really all fit hand in hand. So let's say you launch a women's leadership development program and you're doing training specifically on that. We'll also want you all to take a look at your performance management process. Look for bias in that process. Make sure that process is equitable in itself, right? Look at retention rates, look at attrition rates, and look at it by levels, look at it by different demographic groups to truly see where those gaps are, right? And know that a training will definitely be a huge stepping stone, but you'll need a lot more in terms of that policy creation, that program development, in order to get you all to your future desired DEI state. This is what our DEI framework is based on. This is our 6-point criteria. Governance. This is around making sure you have a solid structure in place to actually carry out your DEI initiatives. So your ERGs, your DEI council, having a DEI team. Your DEI council or ERGs may need some focus training, right? Talent programs, employee experience, communication, stakeholder engagement, and accountability and reporting. Please take our free quiz. We do have a free quiz at Perfeqta that will help you really understand what your organization's current DEI state is, right? It's a very high-level quiz, but it will certainly break down your current DEI maturity level in 5 stages. And you'll be able to see some clear areas of opportunity and improvement that may either inform how you're currently planning your L&D for the next year, or it may also give you some new ideas. It only takes 2 minutes, and it will give you, again, a pretty high level snapshot of your current DEI state. And we'll drop that in the chat before we close out today to make sure you all are able to take a look at that. That's going to be really important as you're planning for next year. The next one here, I've already mentioned this, but providing those engaging and inclusive training methods, keeping it interactive as well. If you do e-learning or if you have e-learning courses, make sure you do kind of look at when folks are dropping off in courses as well, and seeing which ones they complete, right? That might inform, okay, maybe this training is not interactive enough, or even if it's a live training, pay attention to the engagement, how folks are actually engaging with the material, right? Group discussions and role playing, you do want to make sure that the training is applicable and give them time to actually think about how it applies to their role. Give them some best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. How would you handle this? How would you do this, right? Bring in panel discussions after a training to follow up, on that topic that was discussed, to make sure that they see leaders within the company actually talking about how they apply the information from the training to their actions and roles at the company, and real life case studies. If you don't have an issue with, say, women growing at the company, but maybe there is an issue specifically on Indigenous folks or Black individuals growing at the company, have some case studies around that in your trainings. You want to make sure that the case studies that you're bringing in are relevant to your company culture's needs and experiences. And then integrate DEI for busy schedules. So micro-learning, if you've not considered that, Micro-learning are quick trainings that might be done in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something that an employee can just kind of pop on and take. You could even bring in trainers to do live micro-learning sessions, right? Sometimes it's hard to keep folks' attention for a full hour or even for a half day or a full day, but consider micro-learnings, those quick bite kind of topics that they can take with them and throughout the day. This could even be provided in series as well. On-demand training resources, talked about this, providing your employees with a suite of course topics that are relevant, but also providing them with a personalized custom L&D roadmap based on what they need, their role, right? And making sure that they are able to watch that on their own time before work, after work, right? Recognizing that everyone has different schedules and responsibilities outside of just the work that they do for your company. And so if it is something that they can do in their own time, there's some flexibility there. There will be an opportunity, maybe a better opportunity for them to actually engage in the material. And then flexible learning modules. Try out a different way of providing those materials to them. Of course, video content's great, podcasts, right? Worksheets, handouts, small, quick reference guides they can take it to a next meeting. Try different types of learning content and see what really resonates well with your learners. So, measuring training effectiveness. I really want to spend some time here because too often we've seen organizations just do what they've always done before with trainings. They don't switch it up, they don't tailor the content, they don't adjust it, make it more relevant to the current times that we're in. The company that we work for, that you all work for now, I'm sure was a completely different company 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? 2020 to today has been a really transformative time for every organization. The cultures, I'm sure, are completely different. And with that being said, what got you to where you are in your L&D won't get you to where you want to go. So here are some ways in which you can think about how to make your trainings more effective. The first one is debriefing with your trainers. This is something that we offer at Perfeqta, and our client partners love it because we will spend time with them after the training to talk about and provide feedback based on our experience of trainings on how the audience engaged with the material, questions that came up, right? Challenges that were expressed. And we share that with our client partners so that they can adjust trainings for the future, think about new training topics to provide to their employees, or even think about ways to integrate the material into the day-to-day culture of the organization. So if that's not something that you do and you're bringing in trainers and speakers, ask them if they would be open to scheduling a debrief session with you. Pre and post learner surveys, make sure you do that. Data is so important. As you all know, leaders need data. You all want data as well, so that you can be as objective as possible when you are getting that feedback and thinking about ways to improve. If you have over 50% of your learners saying that a training was too long, too short, too high level, too specific, right? That should inform how you make changes for the future. Pre-learner survey helps you to get an understanding of their level of competence and awareness with the topic. You can also ask in that post-learner survey if their level of awareness and competence with the material changed, so you can measure that kind of learning curve that happened. You can also ask them, based on the training, how would you like to see our organization create more policies, programs, provide more resources so that you are able to actually implement this into your day-to-day work. That will give you a lot of insight, so you're not throwing things at the wall or, making assumptions about what they truly need. And those post-learner surveys can be really valuable to how you plan for future trainings and initiatives. Go deeper with your data literacy. Don't just look at the hours spent learning or the course completion rate. Align those learning objectives to change behavior. Apply it to change behavior. So if you are, again, having training specifically on, let's say, microaggressions, does your organization have a microaggression policy? You can look at the rate of microaggressions being reported, right? So there are some different ways for you to be able to think about what are the objectives that we are looking to achieve based on these trainings, not just in what they've learned, but how the behavior will be changed, and think about how that can be measured in the organization. And don't just use vanity measures to track success. So go back to your employees, get feedback from them if you have not already done that. And trust me, your employees want quality training. So get them involved in the process. I thank you all so much for joining. We do have time for Q&A. If you all have any questions, go ahead and start dropping those questions in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function, and I'm happy to answer those questions there. But I just want to end us with this. Make sure that if you are creating training objectives and launching new DEI trainings, make sure you are working cross-functionally within the business. Make sure you have a good group of stakeholders that you're getting involved here, so that you can make sure that it is going to be integrated into the full employee life cycle. Adopt a policy-driven and leadership-supported approach to DEI training. So think about how the training applies to change behavior and how that can be held accountable through policy. Use impact measurement to gain strategic insights. Always, 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 for every single one of your trainings, find ways to measure the effectiveness and the results of it, and keep track of that, because it may be time for you to really ramp up your investments in your company's DEI training, and being able to speak to that impact will allow you to get the resources and the investment that you need. I do want to just mention here again that your audit will pinpoint gaps, but it is going to be a mix of policies, programs, communication, and training that will solve them. This is a long-term journey. DEI is changing rapidly, quickly, and with complexity. And so the training that worked for you even 6 months ago may not be relevant in today's time. But if you are able to really look at the gaps within your organization, that will allow you to think about the ways you can really evolve your own DEI training efforts, or take the trainings that you all currently are planning and implement DEI more into that. With that being said, take a look at our free quiz. You will answer 20 questions about your company's DEI maturity. It'll take less than really 5 minutes. I'm going to drop that in the chat here. And we'll send you immediate recommendations on how to evolve DEI at your organization based on our 6 success criteria: governance, communications, talent programs, stakeholder engagement, employee experience and culture, and accountability and reporting. I am wishing you all the best of luck in your L&D journey for 2024. If you have any questions about the work that we do at Perfeqta, our trainings, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'll keep this slide up here for a few more seconds. If you want to just take a look at this, make sure you go to that link I just dropped in the chat here and take our quiz. We would also love your feedback on it as well. And hopefully it will support, inform, give you some new things to think about with your DEI strategies for the year. So thank you. It looks like we do have one question from Maya. What types of questions should you ask learners in a post-course survey to assess change behavior? And should these questions happen immediately after they take a particular DEI course, or a few months, years after completing a course? So there's a few different questions here, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible in answering these questions. The first one, what type of questions should you ask learners in a post-course survey to assess change behaviors? That will tie back to the learning objectives of the course, right? So every course is going to look different. Now, we do have some standard questions we always ask in our post-course survey. We'll ask about length. We will ask if they read the pre-training materials or pre-work resources. We will ask those questions. We will most certainly ask about the materials of the course. We'll ask about the trainer's delivery. So we do split it up between delivery of the trainer and the content itself. If they felt their learning objectives or their learning needs were met, why and why not? We will ask a mix of qualitative and quantitative questions. Quantitative questions are great because you're able to kind of see, like, on average, X amount of folks have improved in this, right? But we also ask for some qualitative feedback as well. So we'll ask what would be future training topics they would be interested in. We will also ask what the organization can do in terms of providing resources to make sure that they are evolving their DEI efforts, or you can make it more specific to that particular course topic, right? So we'll ask those standard questions, but we do like to ask in order to really assess, again, that learning growth that happened with that specific course topic. We'll ask a very similar question in our pre and our post-learner survey, just so that we can measure what their level of understanding, right, of the topic is. Now, in terms of they understand how that will apply to their day-to-day, that might take a little bit more time, right? So we do send out a survey within the first week of them completing it. In terms of assessing change behavior, so if you are sending a survey out to ask them about their change behavior, you'll more so see that in the actual change behavior itself, because anyone can say in the survey, yes, my behavior has changed. So that will take a little bit more time to assess. I would encourage you to get with your HR, talent, culture, DEI team to really figure out what is that change behavior, evolve behavior that they are hoping to get out of the training, right? And then find different ways to assess for that, because you won't necessarily get that information in that post-learner survey. That's going to take a little bit more time, right? So that's where having those regular culture engagement surveys, having focus groups, right, is going to be really important to dial into more specifics there. We've also seen where organizations will do pilot programs. So they'll kind of pilot test a course with one particular group, measure this effectiveness over a short amount of time before rolling it out to an entire function or rolling it out to the entire organization. So we have another question. What's the best approach method to ensure learning objectives target behavior, specifically to ensure a desired outcome for on-the-job performance? So great question. Provide them with exactly what you all want them to do, right? Like, what is that desired behavior? What is that target behavior? What does that look like in practice? This is why we can always talk about the concepts of DEI from a theoretical standpoint, but in terms of what that actually looks like in real life application, that is where talking through, here are the 5 action items. Here are the 5 things you can do each day to be a more inclusive leader, right? Give them exactly what you want that to look like. But you also want to provide them with the empowerment to be self-accountable for the work. So communicating the why, right? Go beyond just the what. Make sure you do communicate the why, but spend a lot of time on the how. Think about the barriers that hold folks back from being fully inclusive or fully equitable, right? And you might need to go a little bit more specific into your training in order to really tackle those barriers. Vanessa said, do you have examples of the DEIB maturity model for learners? I'm looking for something more substantial, that beginner to advanced, or something that acknowledges that some folks might have a clear understanding of the subject matter because of their identity or lived experiences. We We do. If you want to message me on LinkedIn, or you can respond via email, we do have an example of the DEIB maturity framework. I believe if you also go to our website, actually, let me go to the next slide here. So if you all have any other follow-up questions, you can feel free to answer. If you go to our website, go perfecta.com, go to our resource center. We do have all of our guides listed there. And I believe there you will be able to find our DEI framework guide. In terms of, you're welcome. Let's see. Yeah, in terms of knowing that folks will have a beginner or advanced understanding of it, just being honest here, if folks have not experienced oppression in any form, or if they don't have proximity to individuals that do, it's going to be a little bit harder for them to understand where, how, when that actually does exist, right? And so with our DEI framework, you're able to see it from more of like a high-level organizational view, but this is why we do talk about inclusive leadership. So check out our inclusive leadership guide, because that focuses also specifically on someone's individual experiences and understanding with inclusivity, but that will also bubbles up into how they can contribute to making their workplace more, diverse, inclusive, equitable for everyone. So with that being said, thank you all so much for joining today. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with your L&D plans, your DEI plans for 2024. I am very, very excited to see that organizations are investing more into L&D, because you all have a really significant role and responsibility in terms of driving an organization forward with its DEI goals and objectives. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for being here. Bye, everyone.